Hi there, Release Fire here. So this time I'm taking on the Airbuster, and he's a big boss to fight. And he's a tough one to take down, and it's a fairly long battle. So I'm going to talk you through a lot of it. It's going to be fairly lengthy, but it should give you a few ideas for things to do when you're in the clutch moments against the Airbuster, which is, for me, one of the toughest early bosses in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So hopefully the video is going to help you out. If it does, drop me a like below. But you can see, to start with, it's got attacks that can get you whether you get up close or you're far away with Barret. However, one thing that is definitely for sure is that thunder damage is your best bet. So if you're not well set up to be able to dish out thunder damage from everybody in your party, it's definitely a good idea to do that before you take this fight on. Especially if one of your characters has got Thundara or higher, which will do a huge chunk of damage and help you to get it closer to being staggered on a more regular basis. However, ideally you want to use some of your focus moves. Unfortunately, because I'd upgraded to a different weapon for Barret, I didn't have his focused shot move, which is very good to help you boost up your stagger bar. But either way, it's a good idea to switch regularly, especially between Barret and Cloud, which kind of operate either side of the Airbuster. That should be enough to get you through the first phase, which is relatively easy to get through. But then it backs off and starts to move back down this channel here and fires the majority of its attacks, especially its big laser boost, down the center of the channel. So it's a good idea to switch into Barret and try to get in your damage from afar. Now at this stage, your decisions in terms of what you stripped out of the Airbuster earlier on before the fight don't really change a great deal, but I went with taking out 3 of its weapons cores, which meant that it didn't move so quickly, which definitely, I feel, helped me finishing them off a little bit easier. His attacks aren't actually that bad at this stage. It's only in the final phase where his attacks feel like they could really do any damage. So it's kind of in that last phase where your decisions really kind of come into their own. And like I said, I kind of feel like slowing it down helped me out a little bit. I'm not sure how much, but it definitely helped a little bit. So to get through this central phase, it's just keep on hitting it while it's down there. And you can see now just how much damage Thundara does to the Airbuster. It's like 1,000 damage for one hit. So it's definitely worth cycling through that if you've got it. And then once it's down to around about 25 of its health gone, it will start to send out its fists. And for me, it's kind of a good idea to use one of the other characters to distract it and then switch on over to Tifa, who for me does the most damage to these fists. However, it's definitely a good idea to keep switching back and forth because it kind of moves around pretty quickly. So you can see there I'm just sort of switching on, back on through, cycling through, doing as much damage, initiating spells, and then switching back to Tifa, who seems to do the most damage and get it closer to being staggered. And then as soon as it's staggered, you should be able to finish it off. And you only need to take out one of the fists to be able to get through that little section. And then by the time you get on back to facing off against the Airbuster itself, it should be close enough to stagger again. And as soon as it staggers, you want to switch on into Cloud and do just as much damage as you can. If you've got a summons like I've got here with the Ifrit, it's definitely worth doing this because this will just keep on adding in the damage while you're laying in the damage as well. So it kind of like adds an extra super powerful character to your lineup while it's in action. And then when it's in place, you can get back to just pummeling the Airbuster as much as you can with everything that you've got in your arsenal. And then as soon as it comes back to life, you want to switch on back to Barret, find yourself a place of safety, and get back to using his ranged attacks to be able to do the damage with some more thunder and overcharges and the focus shot if you've still got it. But one thing to be aware of is that your support characters, so it doesn't have to be Cloud to control the summons abilities, so I could be controlling Barret and still initiate one of Ifrit's summon abilities, which can do a huge chunk of damage. And then it's just a case of maxing out your ATB usage, whether it's curing anybody or dishing out more thunder to the airbuster to try to bring it down as much as possible. And as soon as you get to around about the 50% mark, it goes into what is pretty much the last phase where it starts to fly around. And this is obviously the most difficult phase because it's moving around. Your melee characters can't get it, so you kind of got to rely on Barrett as much as you can. And if you haven't got the focus shot, like I don't because I changed to the machine gun, then you might miss out on some really good opportunities to lay in the damage. However, just keep focusing on doing as much damage as you can. Build up your ATBs, use Thunder, use Ether to give yourself a boost of MP, and just keep on cycling through all the attacks for everybody in your team until eventually it comes on in a little bit closer to the bridge for everybody else to dish in the damage. One of the other benefits to using a summons move is that it finishes off with this closing hit, which deals around about 1500 damage to the airbuster, and then you're kind of back to using your characters to keep everybody in action. So for example, Barrett's down at the moment, so I need to use a Phoenix down to bring him back to life, and Barrett's the most important guy here, so you definitely want to protect him to be able to do enough damage to the airbuster to move it in close to the bridge. And the best way to do that is to take Barrett over to the side over here so you can get some kind of healing in place. The amount of damage that the airbuster can do to him while he's kind of protected in the corner is limited, and it gives you a good opportunity to be able to creep on out, build up your ATB, and then creep on back in. And then, like I said earlier, once it's down close to the bridge, switch on over to your best melee characters, dish out Thundara and try to bring it down as much as you can using Cloud's Punisher mode, but it doesn't take long before it heads back on out and you're back to using Barrett to do as much damage as you can. And in this case, I had a limit breaker which I could use, and it's a perfect one because it's a ranged limit breaker, which meant I could do the damage from afar and still keep up the pressure as Barrett. I also had an auto heal materia set for Tifa, so you can see here Barrett got a little bit of a boost there just at the right time, which allowed me to keep on delivering the pressure. I'm still bummed out that I didn't have the focus shot for Barrett, which would have made this fight a lot easier. But again, just keeping up the pressure, bring it in closer, and then switch on into your melees and do as much damage as you can close to, keeping everybody active, and then switch on back to Barrett, cycle, rinse, repeat, and that should see you through the majority of it. You should definitely use Barrett where you can if the airbuster is distracted with the other characters to throw in some cures, but for the most part it's about using the protection in the corner, building up an ATB for Barrett, coming on out, dishing out the damage, and bringing the airbuster ever closer to going down. However, you definitely need to keep an eye on Barrett's health, because as soon as he gets too low, it doesn't take long for a single shot to finish you off. And with Cloud already down on the ground, this was one of those clutch moments where the protection of the side allowed me to keep Barrett in the fight and to give him enough of a boost of health to be able to make it through this little section. So head on out, get an ATB charge, head back to the safety, use a potion to give myself a little bit more health, and then head back on out and use my overcharge to dish out the damage once again, once I knew I had the protection of enough health to be able to do it. And that should give you just enough to bring it back in close to the bridge once again, where you switch on over. Now I only had Tifa active, but she does have a full limit, which meant as soon as I switched over to her, I was able to dish out the somersault, which did quite a decent amount, like 2,000, a little bit over 2,000 worth of damage, which sent it a little bit crazy, but staying out in the corner meant I was away from all the damage. And then it's just a case of doing the same things with Barrett, where I build up an ATB, unleash my damage, and then once I had Cloud back in action, I was able to use his limit break to bring it even closer to being finished. And this is a grueling battle where you've just got to keep on hitting up the pressure, building up your potions, keeping your guys in the fight, and then finishing with your best moves where you can. And that should just about be enough to finish it off with as many thunders, as many attacks, and everything else that you've got in your arsenal. And that is how I managed to beat the Airbuster boss fight here in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like I said earlier, hopefully that helps you out a little bit. If it does, drop me a like below. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, with the links on the left hand side, and hit that bell button if you want to get notifications for all of my videos as they come out. You can check out the rest of my guide to Final Fantasy VII Remake with the links on the right hand side. Leave any comments and I will catch you next time.